Good evening. My name is Elle Evans, he, him pronouns, and I'm a librarian at the Seattle Public Library. We are thrilled and honored to be co-sponsors of this Clarion West series, Beyond Afrofuturism, Black editors and publishers in speculative fiction. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land. These are the traditional, unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish people. We honor their elders, past and present, and we thank them for their stewardship of this land. This event is supported by Seattle Writes, our free programs and workshops for writers, and the Seattle Public Library Foundation, whose generous support makes so many of our library programs possible. Thanks again to Clarion West for hosting this incredible series and sharing it with our local communities and national writing communities.
Hi, I'm Rashida Smith. I'm the six-week administrator of the six-week workshop at Clarion West. And I want to thank you all for being here tonight and thank the Seattle Public Library for helping us to co-sponsor this event. Tonight, I am delighted at our panel. From W.E.B. Du Bois to Samuel Delany, Octavia Butler to N.K. Jemisin, Black writers have been long crafting worlds both familiar and strange in speculative fiction. And if writers build the worlds, editors help shape those worlds and transport us there. Tonight, we are joined by four Black editors of groundbreaking and award-winning anthologies. Linda D. Addison of Sycorax's Daughters, Maurice Broaddus of POC Destroy Horror and Dark Faith, and Cherie Renee Thomas of Dark Matter, moderated by Nisi Shaw, editor of New Sun's original speculative fiction by people of color. This is the first in a series of conversations aimed at broadening our understanding of the role editors play in bringing these stories to life. Please join us as we continue the conversation on Sunday, May 16th with Power in Publishing, Publishers Roundtable, and Monday, May 17th for Zines and Magazines, Expanding Worlds in Speculative Fiction. More information about both of those is available on our website, www.clarionwest.org. And now over to award-winning editor and author Nisi Shaw and our delightful panel. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Thank you for showing up here and listening to us be funny and smart. I want you all to know that we're going to be talking amongst ourselves and just kind of showing off to you for roughly 45 minutes. And then we're going to be looking to you to further our intelligence with questions. And I will be fielding the questions. So I came up with far too many questions, which I tried to put in some kind of order here. Hopefully you will all be illuminated by these brilliant answers. My first question for our panelists, for all of you. What are you trying to do when you edit Black or BIPOC authors? What do you want your anthology or your magazine issue to look like overall? And let's go with Maurice, then Linda, then Cherie.
Hi, everybody. So what I'm trying to do when I'm editing is, well, first off, I'm just trying to bring out their best story, right? I want to put them in the best position to succeed. Frankly, that's what I'm trying to do. And frankly, another thing I'm trying to provide opportunities for people and provide visibility, because I think that's it's all about support, because I want to be as supportive to the author as possible. Mm-hmm. Now, as for what I'm trying to do with a particular anthology or magazine, I don't always know. I know it's probably disheartening to some writers. Sometimes I don't. It's not that I don't know what I'm doing. It's just I don't know what I'm going to do in any particular issue. And I'll do two quick examples. So one, when I was doing Dark Faith, which was the first thing I ever edited, I didn't know what all I knew is I wanted stories that took on the idea of faith from whatever genre, from whatever faith perspective a person had, but I didn't know what that was going to look like. And it wasn't until I found a story that I absolutely loved which ended up being the first story in the anthology. I was like, all right, this is going to set the tone for the rest of the anthology. So I had no idea. I let the slush pile essentially dictate to me what was going to be in the magazine or in the anthology. Now, the flip side to that, my most recent project was I was the guest editor for an issue of Fireside magazine. And at the time, and I didn't realize this was what was going on at the time, but my father had just passed away. And I didn't realize as I was going through the slush pile, I was dealing with stories I was grieving, but not that I was taking it out on the slush pile, but after the issue was put together, I realized, I was processing my grief literally through the slush pile. And I had no idea. But it was stories of grief and loss. And then there came a pivot point, and then all of a sudden the story is focused on being able to dream again. I had no idea that was going to happen. And so basically, when I guess if I was to boil it down to something really short, I'm just comfortable with emergence. I'm there to see what emerges from the stories that get sent to me.
Okay. Emergence. That's a stratagem. Okay. What about you, Linda?
Well, it depends on what it is that I'm editing. For instance, I want to talk more about Sycorax's Daughters. So excited and love this book so much. Well, the idea of it was started by Professor Kenitra Brooks, who approached me and said she wanted to do an anthology of Black women writing horror, which had never existed before. And I was completely excited because, tired of being the only Black unicorn in recognizable horror land. Really tired of that. Not a lot of fun. So what we did is we basically didn't have a theme as much as we wanted the stories and poetry to be written by Black women. There wasn't any, like it had to be about monsters or demons or anything like that. And we reached out through all the magazines, the other anthologies, places that I had come across people, because what we couldn't do with this anthology is what's often done with an anthology, and that is you put a call out and say, I'm going to do an anthology about mermaids, and just take in a lot of stories and throw away whatever doesn't work for you. There wasn't a place like that to go. So we reached out in particular to all these different Black women who had written, because in the Black community, horror is really like what our daily life is. So poems that are in, I'm sorry, it's true. So poems that are, and stories that are in like Essence magazine and other magazines like that are the kind of writers that could write sort of disturbing, either psychological horror or physical horror or both of the above. So when we got stories in, literally, and poetry, because if I'm doing it, poetry is going to happen. It's not even a choice. I'm sorry. Not sorry. So what we did is that there were a few writers like Cherie and some others who were already out there publishing and getting their work out. And the work came to us pretty done, They knew all the different ways, the grammar, the story, the arc of the characters and all that stuff. What we did have in addition to that was really good stories by Black women who needed more support in some of those areas that some of the writers didn't. So that was a big part of it, of the work that we did as far as editors are concerned. I mean, we really spent time. And in doing that, very much like Maurice said, I never edit someone so they sound like me. I mean, what's the point of that? I want them to sound like them. And so some of the things that happened with this anthology, which ended up on the final ballot for Bram Stoker and got incredible reviews in other languages and everywhere, is that we ended up with stories in here with voices that you wouldn't necessarily find anywhere else, with accents that, from Africa, from the Caribbean, because these stories wouldn't necessarily fly in white editors' minds because they don't sound like what they're used to listening to. So, that is really what we wanted to do with this. And as Maurice said, bring in people nobody knew. That was high on my list. I need some more people in that room with me. Because, you know, me, as I say, me drinking alone is not a pretty look after about an hour, I'm just saying. So there was 33 women, Black women in this. And a lot of them have gotten a lot of attention since then, and I couldn't be happier. But that was really a part of it, was to maintain their voice while supporting things that I've learned with storytelling, you know, like, is the character's arc really clear? You know, is there too many story arcs going on? Not a lot, but every now and then there was stories in the book that we had to give that back and forth feedback on. So,
yeah, thank you. Okay, and now the big one. Cherie, you have changed the field. Were you really trying to do that?
Absolutely. I was working at a publishing company, at one of the big five publishing companies, was sitting at the editorial meetings, was listening to the conversations, was seeing the work that was passed on that I will later see do very well in some other places, when there was a different sensibility about this kind of work. And I knew what I hoped would happen, but I wasn't quite sure what might happen with Dark Matter. It didn't even have a title at the time. And it came completely out of my selfish desire to read that work. I read, you know, all of this other work by Octavia Butler and Tammy Delaney. I'd read Tana Reeves' work. I'd read Stephen Barnes, Nichelle Nichols, you know, any writer that I could find. And I just thought, oh, there must be, a collection of short stories, because of course, Bloodchild had come out. I was working also at Forbidden Planet, the science fiction bookstore at the time. And so I was like, oh, they've got her, you know, some of her stories collected. Maybe they'll have all, you know, some other stories that I've never heard of, but writers that I've never heard of. And it didn't exist. And I was pretty astonished. So for me to continue kind of working on that, and that would have been around 98 and in 99, I was very intentional about what it could possibly be. But like Maurice said, and Linda, I didn't know specifically what it would be, because it's mostly determined by the work you receive. And I just wanted to say that each writer could send you any number of stories, completely different tone, completely different genre. It could be science fiction, it could be fantasy, it could be horror, it could be, you know, a blend, a mashup, interstitial. And depending on what really moves you, or what you think readers are going to respond to, it could be a totally different energy in the collection. So when I'm seeking stories for an anthology, or for example, or special issue, like I did a special issue of Strange Horizons of Southeastern writers, Southern writers in the States. I did a Zodiac collection with all kinds of writers for Apex. I'm, you know, editing all kinds of writers for the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. Each time, even though it may be different editorial theme or what have you, I'm looking for the story that I don't forget. I'm looking for the story that lingers with me. I'm looking for the voice that stands out. You may be telling me another Selkie tale, or you may be telling me something that's very traditional and familiar, but the way that you have chosen to tell that story is something that stands out. And I want to tell other people about your story, and I want to read it aloud, you know? So I'm looking for character-driven stories, beautifully written, that have something interesting to say. When I edit Black people in particular, I'm looking for visibility for them. I want the genre to know that there is a lot more stories that they could be reading, that it's not just the ones that we're so familiar with and that we give like big ups every single year and every single anthology, that there are other experiences that are informing this storytelling. And there are other characters that can be the subjects of stories. And it doesn't all have to feel the same way, you know, just this Black character who is behaving in ways that are so very familiar to us. I think that when you reach out and you pull up those kinds of stories, it makes us all have to raise our game and stretch. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm editing.
All right. Okay. Well, you're sort of getting into the next subject that I wanted to touch on. So please let's go in reverse order and have you start out with is there in your experience a difference between editing an anthology that is presenting Black voices and one that is presenting everybody, or one that is focused on a theme that crosses racial definitions? Is that different? Because I know you've done both.
I've done both. I don't know if there is a difference, but I will say things that I think about. I'm thinking about voice in particular in language. I don't believe that every story, there are people from all over the world. And you know, and I have to just say in January, I read 2,400 stories, and I'm gonna say that forever and a day, because I'm still astonished that people sent that many stories to a damn magazine. But I'm just saying, they were busy over the holiday, for sure. So after a while, you get a rhythm going. And if the story is, if I've read 10 stories just with the same plot and it didn't stand out in any kind of way, you didn't add any insights, it's moving on down the line, right? So it really has to stand out and have a lot of cylinders working. When I'm editing Black writers, I am trying to be more conscious of how that they tell stories, because I am super conscious of how people from around the world, no matter their culture, feels like they have to flatten the way they tell stories to mimic or imitate what they've been taught is traditional, you know, language and traditional, you know, rhythms and everything. And, you know, and also, just to be quite frank, a lot of people are white identified. So whatever they say they're from, when they're on the page, sometimes that doesn't come out, whatever culture that they've been raised in or whatever, it doesn't come out. Or if it does, it's like recipes or something like that. But for the most part, it's still operating in a very familiar way. I don't see that a lot when I'm reading Black writers, to be honest. And that's just even Black writers that are only from the United States or only from North America. If you start looking at writers who are from other parts of the world, that becomes even more obvious that there are different ways that they're telling stories. So I'm a little more attuned to that. I'm not trying to make my Black writers sound like, you know, golden era, you know, age science fiction writers or what have you. I'm not trying to make them sound like whoever is the, you know, the top dog of the moment that's being, you know, beloved by all the zines and stuff. I'm trying to make sure that the work that they put on the page is as clean as possible. It makes sense in the rhythm and it reflects what they were trying to do. And it's not translating their culture to someone else, because I'm a reader who looks up things when I don't understand it. I don't assume that you got to make me understand everything. And I felt like that's what science fiction writers and fantasy writers should be accustomed to, since we're reading a lot of work that has invented language, invented everything. And, you know, and we're being asked to, you know, suspend disbelief and go there. So it shouldn't be hard to suspend disbelief for actual lived dialect and language that's in the planet alive today. I'm not talking about dead languages. I'm talking about living tongues. So that's important to me. So I do take time in my editing to make sure that I'm not making them flatten things.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Most appreciated. Linda, do you have experience that you can compare between, is there a difference for you between editing a Black themed anthology such as Sycorax's Daughters and a different sort of approach?
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with what Cherie is saying as far as, you know, with Sycorax's Daughters, it was super important to me to maintain that sense that it's the culture, the society, the family, the everything that is being written from for Black writers. And again, you know, and I've said this a million times over the years, what we need different is we need people like Cherie as an editor at Fantasy and Science Fiction. We need Blacks and everything else other than just what's there now as gatekeepers, because they're the ones reading the work. And again, if it doesn't sound like some reader that they're used to, some writer they're used to, that it can be easily negated as not good writing. And so that was very important for me with Sycorax's Daughters. Like I said, I wanted to support whatever the voices were, and there were some incredible voices. I didn't even have to ask for it, it just happened. But what my editing came to them was just some people were supporting, you know, just like some of the technical stuff and then some of the story arc stuff, but I did nothing but enjoy the actual languages that were being used. And in fact, when I finished the book, there were some stories that I sent a list to the editor, to the, you know, the editor of the, like not the editor, but the publisher of the book, who was going to have someone go over it and said, you're not going to find these words in your common dictionary, but they're real, you know, because I'm that person. I look up everything. So, you know, there were words being used in there that I knew that might come up on a spell check as spelled wrong, and they're not.
Oh,
so,
yeah, you were doing your own style sheet.
I had to, because I knew what was going to happen. Because when I bumped over it on my word processor and I couldn't find it, or if I could find it, I'd ask the author and then I could find it. So that's like the biggest difference, I think, is because of that language thing. You're not language, but the culture, you know, the things outside of what we're used to. And I just want to do a shout out to, I'm not going to be able to say his name. Help me, Nisi. The editor, Cherie, help me. The editor of the Dominion anthology out of Africa. That is.
It's Zelda Knight and Ogenichowe Ekpeke. Yeah. So it's
beautiful.
Zelda Knight and Ogenichowe.
Yes. So, you know, shout out to them, because I've read the anthology. It's come up on a lot of, you know, nominees for awards and stuff. Yeah. And again, what we have here is story being told from a different point of view, a different society, but fascinating stories. And so that's really what's important to me when I do the difference. I will say real quick, I've been editing Space and Time magazine since 1990 on poetry. And that's kind of different. A lot of times it's similar to what Sharia said, in the sense that, you know, if I get 100 poems in every 3 months, I read them out loud. And if I get a reaction inside of myself, then that goes to the top of the list. And then I usually end up with 30 at the top of the list, and I can only pick like less than 15. So then I read them again out loud. So it's a very physical reaction. I don't do a lot of editing with that. Occasionally, if something is just a great poem, but I have a question about something, I will pop back to the poet. So,
all right, okay. Anything to add, Maurice?
No, they pretty much said it all.
Because I mean, come on, because you have been editing. You have experience. All right, I'm going to get you with the next question.
Well, okay, I'll add this. So when I did Dark Faith was, you know, I was open to everybody. And so I'm reading it with one set of eyes, right? But when I was doing things like like Apex Magazine, I did an Afrofuturism issue for Apex Magazine. And actually, I take that back, because in both cases, whenever I came across a Black story, or a story about, well, no, actually that sounds right, a Black story, you know, it's not that I read it with a different, with different eyes or different ears or anything like that, but there was a kind of an openness. I don't know if that's the right word, but hey, let me back up. Cherie, what you said about translating, that's what it boiled down to. You know, sorry, you're about to hear my frustration, because you know, there have been so many times when, you know, I've sent in stories and they've been translated. Like I have to jump through all these hoops. I just went through this huge back and forth with an editor not too long ago, where they were trying, and I could just tell, look here, I'm not here to spoon feed your audience. I'm just not. That's not my job. You know, sorry, I'm just rage. But when I'm writing, so I didn't want to have that space. It's like I wanted to create that space. Like, you know what? I want your stories as they are. And, you know, I'd get these stories for the Afrofuturism issue, and I would just rejoice with those stories. It's like, no, these are the voices. And you know what? We're not translating them for folks. We're giving them raw, unadulterated us, right? So you will have to do the work to come to us. We are not going to be doing that work to come to you. take us at that.
Okay, yeah, that pretty much sums it up, doesn't it? Okay, of my many questions, let's see. Do you have stories you can share about the editing experience? My prompts would be, what was the easiest time you had editing or the hardest? Have you ever edited someone famous? Have you ever made someone famous with your editing? And this time we will start out with Linda, then go to Cherie and Maurice.
The hardest editing I had was a story for Sycorax's Daughters. And all of the stories and poems we got in, this was the only one that we did not include. And I was very, it was not a good feeling. It was a story that just had 3 stories in it. And it was, you know, and I did spend a lot of time with the writer because I loved all 3 stories, but it was too much for one story. And I know that because I write like that. When I write my fiction, it's always, I've been in a writers group since 1990, and they're always telling me I'll write a story. And they're like, Linda, it's a novel. It's a 3-book novel. What are you doing here? You know, and then I have to cut it down and really focus. And that was very difficult. And unfortunately, we couldn't make it work. And I really haven't checked, but I would like to think that that story, that author went on with that story and was able to shape it in some way, maybe in a novel that came out. I don't know. So that was very hard for me because and in general, I will say this, even with Space and Time magazine, whenever I read someone's poem, I want that poem to knock me out. I'm not looking for poems that I don't like. I'm looking for every single poem to be fantastic. And so
what you don't get off on turning people down? You don't like rejection?
No, I don't. and along the same lines, you know, people talk about blind submissions and stuff like that. I don't really care who you are when you send me a poem. And I've gotten poems from the top people in the field. I ignore letters, the preview, your awards. I'm reading the poem and waiting for a feeling. So, and then I don't want to say anyone's name and then forget someone, but I can tell you that there are authors that came into the field. They had some, you know, not people like Cherie and other that are in there that already people knew about, but people didn't know, who in the years since this book came out have just been like blossoming. And I mean, you know, I mean, I'm looking at Slay over here, which is an anthology edited. Let me just get this because I don't want to mess up names.
While she's gone, we can,
You can talk about me anytime. You and I have slept in the same room. You know I ain't like that. I could care less. Anyway, Slay, edited by Nicole Givens Kurtz, which is an anthology of Blacks writing vampire. Now that just came out last year, I believe. And, you know, it's just to see people who have been in Sycorax's Daughters go on and not just publish well, but become part of organizations and conventions that are being organized. That's everything to me.
All right. How about you, Cherie? Do you have an anecdote to relate? Perhaps you want to take people's names out or something?
I was trying to think how to answer this. I've edited a lot of famous writers who are already famous and writers who have become famous. So I'll just say my regular dark matter, A Century of Speculative Fiction from the African Diaspora, Dark Matter, Reading the Bones. I have published people who have gone on to become Pulitzer Prize winners, National Book Award finalists, have won multiple awards. I can't even name all their awards. Lifetime Achievement Award winners, all of these things. And they were none of those things before they were in that book. Some people didn't even know they were Black before they were in that book. I will also say one of the writers whose work I really loved and I wanted to see more happen with that particular story, went on to write a blog post about their experience being a Black fan as a young person. And that blog post went on to inspire Matt Ruff to write the book that became Lovecraft Country. Hello,
Wow.
thank you, that wonderful writer Pam Knowles, and thank you, Dark Matter. So I'm just gonna say, yeah, so that's happening, it's still happening. So, you know, if you don't know, ask somebody, because I've gotten a lot more vocal about it over the years as I've watched all these other things happen beautifully. And I just feel like, yeah, that was pretty significant. We didn't know it at the time. I had hoped that it would be, but it has done those things. So that's that. And so many other books have come out of that. So let's, you know, and I thank Walter Mosley also, because he was doing a lot of active work in publishing at the time as well, to try to, you know, pry open the doors. We're still trying to pry open and keep them open. So there is that. In terms of the hardest editing, one work that we actually didn't publish it. One of the stories I felt like was the hardest thing to edit was because I felt like I'm trying to be a developmental editor. So I look at stories and I don't have to be perfect and finished and, you know, breeze it off. If, you know, in order to make it strong, I can see when it needs to be stronger or what parts need to be hooked up to make it stand well. But there was a story that if I went in and I did anything to it, it was going to change the math of the story. It was going to completely make it into something else. And I didn't feel like that was my call. That was more of the writers. I could raise the question. That's what a good editor does. The author knows the answers. But the questions I was asking weren't questions that I generally would have asked. It was because I knew it was going to get translated. I knew that story is going to get translated. And so ultimately, this was a story that we looked at for a collection that's coming out finally, thank God, this fall, Trouble the Waters, coming out from Third Man Books, hallelujah. That story, I felt like it was way ahead of its time, way ahead of where we are now. And anything that I would do to it would damage it. And so I'm hoping and praying that author is still creating the work so that it can keep moving forward. But it wouldn't have survived that process, if that makes sense. So that was very hard. It was very difficult.
It sounds like you were very sensitive to what was there and what needed to be there.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask a writer to do anything that I wouldn't be willing to do as a writer.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
Maurice, got a story for us?
Oh, I got a couple. You know, I haven't made anyone famous. You know, I will say, you know, and I'm betting my other editing colleagues would agree with me. I love breaking out new writers and being their first time publishing. I love to discover new voices and bring a spotlight to them. And all right, so the easiest editing jobs, and actually what was great about it is these are some of the famous people, you know, I've edited. What? Sorry, Cherie, I'm about to do this to you. So one of them was Cherie, and it was actually for a recent story here in Apex. And I one of those things, because, you know, as an editor, sorry, Cherie, just, I don't know, blank out your camera or something. I don't know what to tell you. But, you know, you get these stories in, and you can tell within the first couple lines whether or not you're in good hands. And I read that first line, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy this story. And I haven't read nothing but the first line. I knew I was in good hands. And it was great having the conversation with the publisher, because I'm like, we're going to buy the story. He's like, have you even read more than the first line? I said, not yet, but I can tell you we're going to buy this story. And he's like, well, will you at least read the story? And I'm like, okay. I read the story, and I said, told you I was going to buy the story. He's like, well, let me see it. You know, we can't respond to her. And by the way, this is like within the hour. So I said, we can't buy a story within the hour, you know, until I've at least give me a chance to read it. And I'm like, okay, I'll give you a chance to read it. 24 hours later, yeah, we're going to buy the story. Yeah, thanks, Jason. That was a great waiting that one out for me. And then the other easiest edit for me was Walter Mosley, and he was a dream to work with, and I'm not gonna dance around this. I was nervous when, you know, Walter Mosley is a hero of mine. He fundamentally impacted my career, my writing, and my thoughts about who I wanted to be as an author. And then to have a story from him in my hands, and I'm like, I'm about to edit Walter Mosley. So I'm like carrying around this manuscript, like, no one make any sudden noises. We're reading Walter Mosley. But again, it was a great editing experience, and it was, and in my heart, it was great coming full circle. Now, I did have one hard edit, and I'm not going to name any names, and it wasn't a person of color, but they were someone who was famous in their own mind, and it was a tough edit, and it was a situation where I had inherited them due to the nature of the project. I had inherited them as an author who I could not just dump outright. And so with my hands kind of tied behind my back, I was just like, okay, well, let me get this story. And it was man, we fought back and forth. And basically any comment I made, he would just he would he was just like, I'm not changing anything about my story. My story is perfection. And you just don't understand where I'm coming from. And I'm like, I understand where you're coming from. You're coming from bad storytelling. I get that right off the bat. Sorry, but yes, that's where we were. So I get where you're coming from. And so, but because my hands were tied, I just had to let the story just fly. And especially with him refusing to do any edits. And I'm just like, never again. Never again. And that was the lesson I learned. It's like, I'm going to make sure I don't go into another situation where my hands are tied in any way, so that, so I can always put forth the best stories possible and work with people who, I love to work with, frankly.
Oh, thank you. Just one more thing. Can you explain what STET is?
Yeah, so STET basically means, I forget how it comes from, but basically, I'm not going to make the change. How it appears, that's how I need it to be in there. And he STETted everything.
Okay. I mean, it's not like you have a STET gun or anything like that. It's just something that you write on the manuscript to say, I meant it. It's going to stay that way. Yeah. All right. I think we have time for one more of my myriad questions, and then we'll go to audience questions. This one is about, well, I think one of them is, you has already answered this. How long have you been editing? Do you have a favorite project you've completed, a favorite editing project completed by someone else? Do you have a dream project that you as a Black editor wish you could undertake? And that's the most important thing I want to know. Favorites, your own, others, and then dreams. So for this, let us start out with Linda, and then go to Maurice, and then wind up with the best of all, Cherie.
Hey, just say it as it is. Because you know what? Before I answer your question, I'm just going to tell you, the first story in Sycorax's Daughters was me begging, Cherie, please can I have, because literally I had read it somewhere. I'd read it in her collection, and then the title was just like everything to me. I'm not going to read it because then I'll take up too much time because I love it so much. But anyway, where to start? The favorite editing thing that I've done besides Sycorax's Daughters, because like I said, that was just everything for me. The year that came out is when I was given a Lifetime Achievement Award and from the Horror Writers Association. And I was like, not comfortable with that. And then this book ended up on the final ballot and I was like, okay, I'll take it. So besides that, I was on the editorial committee for an anthology called A Twisted Book of Shadows, which has been on a lot of award lists and it made the final ballot. I don't think it won. I can't remember now. I'm so bad with these things. But the reason that I was on that is because Christopher Golden put out a call on Facebook and said, you remember this, Maurice, he put out a call and said, this is going to be like a, paying professional, but I want it to be open for everyone. So we're going to do blind submissions, and I need readers who are not just white. And I was like, that's right, Christopher. And he and I talked about a lot of the things in the business, so I wasn't surprised to hear him say that. So he had an editorial committee doing the reading for him. It was open for 1 month. Like Cherie said, we didn't get 2,400, but we got 700 stories in the shortest month of the year. I'm just saying, February. And I read every single blessed one of them, not always to the end, because, if you can't grab me in the first page, I'm moving on, because we couldn't pick 700 of them. So, and it wasn't about how can I make this story better? It was like, I just got to read them and pull out the best ones. So I was very proud of being part of that editorial committee. I was very happy with the results. I mean, he actually got enough for 2 books. I don't know if he's going to do a second version of it. And I believe I wrote the introduction for that too. Yes, I did. So that was, I thought, such a good example to the rest of the editorial world of anthologies to say, look, guys, yes, you need to be thinking in these terms. Because like I said, that went on and did fabulous. My favorite that I'm in is Black Panther World, Tales of Wakanda. I mean, come on. What? I mean, literally, are you kidding me? Seriously? Ah! Anyway, besides it being beautiful, I've been in 50 anthologies, and let me tell you, this is a beautiful production. So that's my favorite, and it's the latest that I'm in. And I wrote a story I wouldn't have written if I hadn't been in this anthology. And the one that's impacted my life the most is Dark Matter, because Sherino, before Dark Matter, nobody knew diddly squat about me. And I was publishing. So after Dark Matter came out and it got so much attention and so many awards, all of a sudden people were like, oh, you're in Dark Matter. Oh, okay. So I was one of those people in Dark Matter that people didn't know my name until I was in there. And that was my cookie cutter for wanting to do Sycorax's Daughters. I wanted that same energy. I wanted it to have names people recognize, and I wanted a whole bunch of people nobody did, so later on they would.
And do you have a dream, or did you just live your dream?
Ooh, my life is the dream. Every day, seriously, I'm in dream heaven right now. Like all these shows, The Voice and all those. Yes, I've got it. I got the golden ring. I got all those things. So it's hard to say. I've been thinking about this and I was like, what would I want? I don't know. I mean, I wrote down 2 things, some kind of strange version of an Afrofuture anthology. Not sure what that means. New planets, like where I ask people to write stories that are on planets that we don't know anything about. I don't know.
Cool. And Maurice?
Yeah, so my favorite projects I've done, well, Dark Faith is going to be one, partly because it was my first, and you never forget your first. But it was also a passion project to me because matters of faith are very close to my heart. And so to be able to do a whole anthology where I get to explore this area that's so close to me, meant a lot. And to be able to do it with people who I loved. I mean, I still go through that table of contents going, yes, people that I love, Linda. I go through that table of contents and I'm like, this meant a lot to me on so many different levels. Cause it's like, I know these people's journeys and I know how their journeys have impacted me. And there was just a certain magic to the project that, I just can't even define. Everything just came together for me. And I was just like, the whole experience was magical. And I'm like, all right, Dark Faith is my favorite. My second favorite, it's a kind of a tie, but it's the 2 solo issues I've done for Apex. And basically for the similar reason, I have people in it that I love, breaking out some new authors, bringing visibility to some authors who, I didn't necessarily have it before. And then to see some of those stories go on to be, award nominated and things like that. It was great. And so so the 2 Apex issues would be my second. Linda covered the favorite project I've been in because, Black Panther was a dream. As You might not be able, well, you probably can see my complete Black Panther Funko figure collection behind me.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I would go grab it, but I've been a Black Panther person for a long time. I even have his very first appearance over in the protected area of my comic book collection. So yes, that was a dream come true. Now, as far as a dream project, I haven't actually allowed myself a lot of room to dream about my next editing project, mostly because, I have so many deadlines right now. I can't even think past them to think of what a dream project might look like. But part of me is thank you, Nisi, because now it's been bubbling in the back of my head, is this whole idea of, again, kind of like the Afrofuturism project you're starting to noodle with, Linda, but the whole idea of merging activists and writers to present possible futures that could begin with community work right now in the spaces that we live in right now to help chart paths forward for us. That idea is now starting to settle in the back of my head. So I'm just like, I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but something might happen now. So.
Okay. Cherie?
I think my dream project initially was dark matter, even though I didn't quite know what that dream was going to be. It's been an amazing journey, so that was fun. But I'm kind of like the whatever I'm in last, I love it. I know that's crazy, but I was just thinking back over time. I really was so thrilled to be in Donald Hopkinson's anthologies, in Mojo, Conjure Stories, and then So Long Been Dreaming. That was just amazing. More recently, I was super happy to be in Sycorax's Daughters, which was like just, I'm a horror person. So I was like, yay. And then get to work with Linda, who was a wonderful editor, and worked really hard on that book. And what else? I'm in Slade too. So that was fun. They gave me excuse to write crazy, like vampire-ish story, because I'm never going to do exactly what you asked me to. I'd start out trying to. You asked me to write a romance, it's going to be some murder in it. Like, I don't know. It's just going to go left. I'm super excited to be in the Black Panther book. I mean, that was amazing. And it taught me that I can do some things that I didn't know I could do. So that was a great career milestone just on the creative level. And I think that's what writing to certain anthologies can do. You might not have a trunk story that fits the theme that they're looking for. It encourages and inspires you to write a new work. And sometimes you have to stretch yourself to do that. So
yeah.
I'm working on a dream project now, I guess, sort of. With two writers, we're doing Africa Risen for Tor Books. And it's kind of an Africa in her diaspora collection. What I would have hoped the third volume of Dark Matter would have been what I really wanted the first volume to be, but I didn't know any African writers. So, and then all the ones that were coming to me were white South Africans. So I was like, not for this spot, maybe it's for something else. This is a very precious space. So I'm very conscious of that, because I think that there's so many books out here, that there are so many other places that people can publish. When people are trying to create space, sacred space for certain writers and voices, you need to honor that. And you need to respect that space. I know I do. I don't go run into, Filipina LGBT book and I'm not Filipina. You know what I mean? I leave that space for what those editors are doing. And I don't write them letters saying, why don't you have this space for me? Because I feel like you could take that same energy and send it to all the other editors that are publishing fully all white books on a regular basis. Send that energy to them, leave our spaces where we're trying to create room and visibility and emergence, as Maurice was saying, for new voices and writers.
Hear her, hear the speaking voice of the true voice of the African diaspora editor. Yes. Feed her. She says it. It's true.
Because if you write me a letter, I'm going to write you back. You ain't going to like what I write you.
So moving on to some of the questions from the audience, we actually answered one because I think it was Onyx Pages wanted the question about the dream project. So there we go. And here's one that you wanted to answer, Charisse. Evan Peterson is asking, I can't find a visual art book on the visual history of Afrofuturism. What will it take to get a coffee table art book like this? Would you all launch that?
It already exists. You should.
I was just going to say, I was in that book.
It already exists. So you should, there's several. So one of them I can recommend is Cosmic Underground, that was co-edited by Ronaldo Anderson. That came out a couple of years ago. There's also a Canadian version of that as well called Northside, which is Canadian writers from Toronto and from Montreal, Quebec and what have you, and it's all visual art from Afrofuturist visual art as well. Those are really lovely books to look at.
All right. Let's go on to another one, unless any input from Linda or Maurice on that. Okay. So next question from the audience. I am curious if the editors are thinking about making or facilitating the creation of audiobooks for their works. And I'm just going to say there is an audio book of New Suns. So yeah, what about y'all? Okay, Linda, you're on.
I would say for my own books, I definitely want to do an audiobook. And I haven't set anything up because like Maurice, I have a lot of deadlines in my way to finish before I can do anything else new. But I would definitely love to, because I know that's a very active area for a lot of people, either out of convenience or out of necessity to have the audiobooks. So, and I believe I would not be saying anything secret if I'd said that a book that the three of us are in is going to be an audiobook soon. Yes? An anthology? Yeah, okay. I don't think it's a secret. So Black Panther is going to be coming out as an audiobook. So, it's just a fun romp, this one. So I hope more people will either buy it in book form or buy it to listen to.
Anything to add, Maurice?
I've been burned on this whole audiobook thing recently. So I'm kind of cautious on I don't even know, should I even tell this story? But let's just say that there was a project I was editing, and then they went to do audio versions of the stories, or actually of the essay in particular. And should I tell us? Should I go with that, or keep talking?
Keep talking. I'm not going to shut you up yet.
Okie doke. So there was yeah, man, this was painful. But the short version would be, I turned in these stories and these essays for a magazine that I was editing, and then due to we'll just say a lack of oversight, they had let a white guy read all of the stories.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, and I'm still puzzled by puzzled isn't even a strong enough word, but if the first line of your essay is, I am a Southern Black woman, and you're the white guy going, hey, I'm the guy to read this essay, I don't even have the words for that. So it's caused me to, kind of pause, well, not pause, but have a certain hesitancy when it comes to audio projects, because I want to be able to, if there is an audio project, again, what I've learned, I need to have some control and some say and some pre-approval in these projects, or to ensure that they are done right. And the fact that I didn't have that sort of control or oversight in the process beforehand, again, lessons learned, because, if I'm going to be there and I want to be a supportive force, then, I need to be doing that job all the way through, frankly. And so it's a lesson that I've learned. I mean, and I say all that knowing full well I just sold the audio rights to Pimp My Airship. So hopefully that'll be coming out before too long too. But let me tell you, when the audio for Usual Suspects just came out, and let me tell you, I had approval on who was reading that story beforehand. So
Yeah, yeah.
Short answer is yes.
And by the way, in case you didn't know it, Pimp My Airship is a novel that Maurice so kindly wrote for us to enjoy. Shall I go on to the next question?
I just want to add, on piggyback on Maurice's audiobooks. I don't know. I mean, I have like podcasts and stuff, versions of it for the publications that do that. So that's always fun. But one reason I had to do a podcast of my own story is because the person that was doing it for the house was a South Asian one with a British accent. So they didn't really work for my Black woman, Southern hoodoo tale. And then they didn't know anyone in their stable. Hopefully they know people now, but they didn't then. And so I had to do it myself. So this is like an issue across the field, that they need to have more voice actors in their back pockets for different stories. Yeah.
I have seen a publisher who actually has a questionnaire for authors as to, you know, what sort of voice do you expect to be reading your story in this audio version? So they're catching on. They're catching on. But yes, very important. I'm glad you brought that up. Next question. Let's see. I'm not going to give the name of the person asking this. What advice would you give for Black authors writing short stories? How to get their things published? Are they writing stories that are going to get into anthologies? Are they writing the kinds of stories that are going to get into magazines? What advice do you have to help them do that? Let's start with Cherie.
I would just say for the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, I'm finding, don't send me novellas. Don't send me, if you're a new writer, don't send me your novella or your novelette. It's a big length of a story, and it's got to work hard all the way through. And a lot of times they fall down when you're new. So give me a solid short story, 5,000 words, 3,000 to 5,000 words, and keep it moving. Make it start from the beginning, get in there, hook us in the beginning, hold us all the way through with your wonderful storytelling, stick the landing, and you got it. And that's for magazine and anthology. Like, don't send me your novel excerpt. It's not going to make it, most likely. You know, so that's one thing I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. Linda.
I wanted to add to that because one of there's a couple of things that I work with writers with, and one is just make sure you know what the guidelines are. If they say they want 2,500 words, don't send them 26. I mean, even though you think it's the best story in the world, don't do it. Just don't. And the other thing is that something that I've been learning for 50 years of writing is know your chops, like understand the concept. Cherie already talked about the idea of the story grabbing you from the beginning, carrying you through the energy level. But know the difference between it's with and without apostrophe. Know the formatting of dialogue. Know the formatting of a standard guideline, because you could have the best story in the world, and it's like going to an interview in torn jeans when you should probably be wearing a suit. I'm just saying, check your spell checking, go through and just, because people think editors will make changes for a wonderful story, and that's just not the world anymore. For the most part, you've got to come in there in a lot of these anthologies and magazines and be really tight already. And if they have a couple of things, that's one thing, but you're reading, like Cherie said, 2,400 stories, there's no place in there for her to tell you how to use your chops, the basic stuff. So it's really important to get someone else to read that has some ideas about these things. Those are just the important things to really tighten it up so that when you send it out, your best work can just be, read and loved.
I'd just say, and read where you're trying to publish. If it exists already, read the work. Read that magazine, read one issue if you can find it, read a couple, skim it if you have to, but get a sense of the aesthetic. If it's an anthology that doesn't exist yet, read the work of the editors. A lot of times they're writers. We love writers. We're writers. We love working with writers. But read their work too, just to get a sense. Doesn't mean that everything they publish is going to be exactly like theirs, but read the work if it exists. Read it. That will help you out a lot.
That was exactly what I was about to say. So there you go.
All right. I think we're closing in on the time when we're going to need to shut this down. There is a more or less related question. What's the best way for potential Black writers to join the world of Afrofuturism? Is this a thing? Anybody?
I don't know what that means because we don't have membership cards, or if we do, maybe Tempest knows. I don't know.
I'm glad you said it because I thought I missed a meeting or something.
You know, but I'm gonna be the auntie on the side with my drinks, giggling.
I mean, there are some magazines like Fire where it's like a Black magazine that publishes science fiction, but like you said, there's no Afrofuturism team group club.
On Facebook community, you can join.
I was just going to say on Facebook. Yes, is that what you were talking about, Cherie?
Yeah, I was going to say that you can join other communities. There's like Afrofuturism 2.0. There's the State of Black Science Fiction, which is really old and very big, that Milton Davis runs. I think there's Afrofuturism Central. I mean, but they have different personalities. Some is all comic books, some of it's all Marvel, DC Universe stuff, some of it's cosplay, some of it is, more about books and reading and art, some of it's more academic. So you just find the space, if you're on that app, that you can vibe with. But I don't know. And then there are conferences, I guess. FireCon is coming up. They did one last year. They're having another one this September. And there's Multiverse, and there's diversity track programming at DragonCon. And I'm probably forgetting, Maurice Walters has a lot going on in Baltimore. There's the East Coast comic books community that's out in Philadelphia. So there are, lots of different groups. And then there are other people, surrealists and Afro-surrealists and this and that. Don't call them Afrofuturists. They're Afro-surrealists, but they are also, kindred spirits doing interesting work. So,
yeah, the whole term Afrofuturist is actually kind of vexed, isn't it? I mean, there are people who will throw down if you call them an Afrofuturist, basically. So
I call people by what they want to, but it's confusing because some of those people have been eating off Afrofuturism for 2 decades. So it's confusing, and the algorithms haven't caught up with their new names. So we got to let the algorithms catch up to the new thing, because when you look them up, put in Afrofuturism, they face right there smiling, saying I'm an Afrofuturist. They own all the documentaries, and they didn't turn down no checks. So I'm just saying, so it's hard. Let us catch up to the evolution, but call people by what they want to be called.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So we do have one more question here that Cherie, you marked as something that you wanted to answer. And then I think I'm going to have to cut off the fire hose of our brilliance. What's the best way for an editor to ensure an anthology includes Black writers? Is it better to solicit all stories from specific writers rather than do open submissions?
I do both. And I kind of rag on people who only do invitation only, because I think that sucks. It's easier for you perhaps as the editor, but it's not great for the industry. It's not great for new writers. So do both. Invite people that you think you would love to have in it if they have time and interest and can do it. Send them personal invitations and also do an open call. Save spaces for new writers. There's so many voices that you would love that you might not know you would get if you were just going by your circle of friends, especially if you don't know any other writers outside your community. Absolutely have an open call, but put those open calls where Black people or whatever community you're looking for, where they are. do the homework and find out where they are, and then have those people share that call for submissions, and you will get submissions. Yeah.
Linda?
I was going to just I just want to like add and buffer up what Cherie said. You know, when things come out that are calls, not just for Black writers, but the Horror Writers Association, which I'm involved in, sends out things about scholarships and all kinds of different things. We just started a new diversity grant thing, which I'm part of. And when that came out, I didn't just put it on my page in Facebook and my thing on Twitter. I found out what the other groups are, which I'm part of anyway, and made sure to shout out to those groups and say, yo, don't sleep on this, do this, you know what I'm saying? Like, get involved in that. So I think that, you know, it becomes a part of reaching out. And then what Chris Golden did, you know, if you're a white editor doing an anthology, then get yourself some readers in there that are a mix, not just you, so that when those stories come in, they have some sensibility to a different kind of voice that's just, you know, could be magnificent. You just don't know because you ain't used to it.
Yeah, you haven't heard it, so how can you hear it?
And the last thing I'll add is, you know, read widely. A lot of editors end up siloing in, you know, what they, in essentially genre comfort food. You know, they like what they like, and they kind of stay in that one small circle of story types. And, you know, so part of being proactive is, you know, going out and reading as widely and as broadly as possible in all sorts of locations, all sorts of magazines, rather than just stick to, you know, what you know and the channels that you're familiar with.
I have seen a strategy, I think it was employed by, John Joseph Adams once, where there was a particular window so that POC authors had like an extra week in which to submit. So it would open up to stories of a particular ethnicity's authorship a week ahead of anybody else being able to. That might be a way to encourage also. I don't know if any of you have tried that. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so with that, we must conclude. Any last statements from our glorious panelists? Broadus?
Keep writing, and we want to see those stories. Your voice, your stories are important, and we want to see them.
Thank you. Addison?
Same thing. When I mentor writers, I tell them to go and dig into the deepest fears and joys they have and write from there, because that's what's going to make you different. Not writing like someone else, but writing from the depth of what has made your life what it is.
Thank you. Thomas?
Don't give up on yourself.
All right. And I will say, never self-reject. Rashida, we're done. On to you.
It was incredible. Thank you on behalf of the staff and the board of Clarion West and all of our literary community online and wherever we're at. I want to thank Maurice, Nisi, Linda, Cherie for coming and bringing this conversation to us. In addition to our 6-week workshop, Clarion West offers short online courses year-round, including classes like creating an immersive audiobook with Zelda Knight, and upcoming panelists in our Black Publishers panel. We offer a limited number of scholarships to each class to Black and Indigenous writers and writers from other marginalized backgrounds on a first-come, first-served basis. So for more information, please check out our website. Also coming up, Clarion West Nerdlesque, May 8th, our virtual gala fundraiser and night of burlesque that will tickle your nerdiest fancies. And for more great advice and conversations on writing and editing, please check out the Pocket Workshop, now available from Hydra House. It's on their site, bookshop.org, or wherever books are sold. It contains 24 instructors, advice, essays, including Ursula Le Guin, Octavia Butler, and Vonda McIntyre. And finally, just a big thanks to our co-sponsor, the Seattle Public Library. So look for the annual summer book bingo card that's coming out in May. Head to their website for more details on this and other exciting upcoming events. Thank you for spending some time with us. Time zone appropriate salutations, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks.